of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God of peace, we invite you to preside over our meeting. Even if we have different opinions, give us unity of spirit. Help us to each listen politely as others share their points of view. Help us to work as a unified team in combining ideas for a great outcome. Help us to work as a whole rather than as individuals trying to promote their own agendas. May we have a spirit of camaraderie in this room and work together for our shared mission. Amen.
Amen. Ask for the quorum. Yeah. That's right.
Ms. Parker, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay. I'll now open it up for a citizens' comment period on anything that's not on the agenda. Seeing none, close the citizens' comment period. Are there requests to delay, defer, any additions?
No, sir. No changes.
Thank you.
Our first public hearing item is resolution recommending approval and certification of comprehensive plan amendment. The Courthouse Village Small Area Plan is a proposed amendment to the Goochland County 2035 Comprehensive Plan. The Courthouse Plan is intended to update, modify, and supplement all chapters in the 2035 plan, as well as to modify the Goochland 2040 Major Thoroughfare Plan and the Parks and Recreation and Facilities 2020-2023 Amended Master Plan.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Crystal Anitis, Deputy County Administrator, and I assume I have the pleasure of presenting the proposed public hearing staff presentation on Courthouse Village Small Area Plan. So just a brief introduction. As you all know, we've been going through this process for quite some time. Tonight you'll actually have a presentation from Timmons Group, the consultant that we've been working with since late February on our small area plans. And then we will have a public hearing on the proposed Courthouse Village Small Area Plan. I just want to highlight for you all and for the audience members and those watching where we have been in this small area planning process. It's been a rather extensive process, especially on the outreach portion. Our planning efforts began in February 2022. We've had to date a total of 5 community meetings / open houses for each area, our Centerville and Courthouse Village area. We've had roundtables for each area as well. That was held in spring of 2022. We did a 4-month community-wide survey. We initially had some drafts that were released in November of 2022, right before Thanksgiving. I'm sure you all remember that. We also had a joint planning commission and board of supervisors workshop. Appreciate you all attending that. We've also had an open online comment period that ran through the end of February, and we also had a planning commission workshop with you all in the spring. I forgot to list that here. And I will say that we took a step back in late February to really try to be intentional and reflective of everything that we've received as comments through February 2022 to February 2023, because we missed the mark in November 2022. So as a result of that, May 2023, we did release updated plans based on all of the feedback received. So just a little highlight of the purpose of the Courthouse Village Small Area Plan. This proposed amendment to the Goochland County 2035 Comprehensive Plan. So again, it's a proposed amendment. The proposed Courthouse Village Plan could be used as a guide in the future growth for this area. We're actually in the courthouse area. It does not change existing zoning. It does not change current design guidelines or overlay districts. However, it may be used to facilitate future code and regulatory changes. And so just touching on what is our goal with all of this, and I alluded to this if you all, I know a lot of you were at our community meeting for Courthouse Village, really using the public input to create public value, things that foster value and pride in our community. So wanting to be reflective and representative of Goochland's desire to further high quality of life measures such as pedestrian connectivity, public spaces, rural preservation, historic character, as well as the recruitment and retention of small businesses. And that's particularly applicable to our Courthouse Village area. And just outlining the next steps, we do have a Board of Supervisors hearing slated for June 12th, and if adopted, are recommended for approval. Staff will begin working in the following months to develop proposed zoning ordinance amendments and design guidelines reflective of this plan. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Timmons Group for their presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Commission. My name is Chuck Rapp. I'm a Senior Project Manager with the Timmons Group, and I am honored to present our draft plan to you this evening. So we'll talk a little bit about our objective with this project, what we're hoping to achieve in our introduction to small area plans and the Courthouse Village small area plan, and then dive into some questions and answers afterwards. So as was noted before, this has been a long process. We are currently a little over a year, year and a half into this almost now. Started back in February. A lot of roundtables, a lot of community meetings, surveys, all of which we spent a significant, about 6 weeks or so, diving through all that, having meetings with staff, making sure that we understood a lot of that comment. And I'll have a slide in here that'll talk about some of the comments that we saw and how we hope to address those throughout this plan. So here you can see in May, towards the end of this, this is where we are now, after holding additional community meetings, work session with y'all a month ago, and then working towards public hearings this evening and over the next few weeks. So what's different? What are we trying to do differently in these plans? Different from the prior drafts that were done back in November of this past year. We wanted to really establish a clear plan structure. So you'll see specific chapters, sub-chapters underneath that. Really tried to organize this so it's easy to navigate and you can quickly find information throughout it. We wanted to also make sure that we captured a vision from the public and what was the desire for what we want this area to be in 10 to 20 years. We want to make this clear and easy to follow. So instead of long text, we've got a lot of graphics, we've got consistent maps, and hopefully that helps to convey information in a simple method that really is easy to navigate and easy to comprehend as folks work their way through this and create a little bit of a less dense document that still has the same amount of information there. And last, we want to make sure this is relevant to Goochland County. We want this to be realistic. We want things that can actually be implementable step by step, matrix of implementation throughout this plan, so that it really is a guide to help bring that idea to reality over time. So as Crystal briefly touched on this, but we're just talking about, what are small area plans? These are 10 to 20 year visions. It's a long-term game here where it's a really an investment into imagining how this area will evolve over time. It's a guide for future rezonings, so it's something to look back on as to what's the adopted vision for the community by your board, by you as the Planning Commission, and by the community. Hopefully it's supported. This does not change existing zoning on a parcel or other planning regulations. This is, again, that guide, that reference, and also provides that foundation for future work so that you do have an incremental step-by-step process of adoption as you work through things in the future. We focus on development character of the built environment, protection of natural resources, and how we want things to evolve over time. So things like building height and building form, you'll see a lot of that in this presentation this evening. This also allows the alignment of capital investment over time. So where does the county invest its resources to ensure that it keeps pace with development in a controlled manner and targets those areas where growth is targeted? And then just encourages efficient use of land where there's already that investment to capitalize on that investment rather than continue to sprawl out and create long-term expenditures for the county. So in our introduction chapter, this is our introduction to small area plans. This can be used for this plan as well as future plans. So wanted to provide some orientation as to where is Goochland County. I'm sure all of y'all know, but just for somebody that might be reading this in the future so they see the relationship to Richmond to the southeast and Charlottesville to the northwest, and some of the major transportation corridors that pass through the county as a means to moving around this area. I also wanted to show where these the small area plan locations are within Goochland County to show that relationship to the county. These are all part of the larger plan for Goochland. Wanted to look at transportation corridor patterns, where are folks coming and going within these areas. So you can see particularly with Route 60 moving through the Courthouse Village River Road there. So you have a corridor there. It's a bit different than what you see with the Centerville small area plan, where you have a lot more traffic coming than the Richmond area. So just a slightly different approach for this Courthouse Village plan than when we looked at Centerville. Looked at employers, where are some major employers throughout the county. So obviously this highlights a lot of private sector employers around the Centerville area, whereas in this particular village area in Courthouse Village, we have a lot more public sector components. We have the county administration buildings where we are now. We have the school board. We have the courthouse, you have the correctional facility. So you've got a lot of community-centered services here as well, so a slightly different approach. But there were some repeating themes throughout a lot of the community input that we heard to date and what we read through, the videos we watched. And we tried to break those down into sizable pieces here. There was a desire to promote small businesses, and we'll talk a little bit about how we tried to do that throughout this plan. An emphasis on building form, ensuring that it's contextually appropriate to the existing development patterns that are already here. Strong desire for walkable public spaces, whether those be plazas or parks, and connectivity between all of that to create this interconnected network. And then really trying to find ways to preserve the community character that makes Goochland County unique, in particular Courthouse Village when we looked at this one. So with that, I wanted to take just a minute to talk about some of the kind of high level, some of the desires that were expressed towards the end of the public process with the prior drafts. And some of the feedback was to really focus more on that walkable mixed-use village core here in the Courthouse Village, and one that would incorporate public spaces. So you'll see as we get into this, that's where we established the mixed-use village core designation to try and really create that opportunity for a mixture of uses, different types of building types that would fit that development form. We also identified an area for a road diet that would allow some enhancements to the pedestrian zones. You could have wider sidewalks, some landscaping, some public seating, and try and create that public space that was a desire from the community. Certainly, this is a very historic area. There's a lot of historic resources. There is a strong desire to find ways to preserve those historic properties. And ensure that future buildings were of an appropriate scale. So one of those that was repeated many times throughout the public was the village core should really have, I want to get I want that to restart. One of the comments that really was repeated a lot was this village core should really be no more than 2 stories high. And so you'll see that reflected in the village core in our development form pattern. Also tried to identify some tools for historic preservation. So we've mapped the historic properties that are on the National Register nominations throughout this village boundary. We've identified some opportunities, whether through additional work through National Register District or nominations, or even a local historic district here that is another option. So you have a few varieties of things that could be used to help preserve that historic fabric that's already here. There is a need for more affordable housing. So that is also appropriately scaled. So a strong desire not to have large-scale multifamily buildings, not really high-density type development. So we've created a variety of land uses, residential and mixed use, that encourage a variety of housing types. So we'll talk about townhomes and duplexes and things like that as a way to hit different price points so that everything isn't just a large-scale single-family detached home. And we talk about how to scale that appropriately to the surrounding development patterns that are there. And the last, really walkability in the village. So we did a full inventory of roads and sidewalks throughout the entire village and identifies where those missing links need to be filled in, and we have that on a map as well. We identified typical street sections so that as developments come forward, you all as the Planning Commission and then the board, you have basically a tool to look at and see how should streets be, where should the sidewalks go, should they have multi-use paths, and you can have something as a reference point. And then last, there's also a heavy emphasis on greenways using the stream corridors and other routes to try and connect an additional backbone there for folks to navigate the area. So with that, diving a little further into the courthouse, we tried to identify, again, some guiding principles, some vision elements, recognizing this is the historical and institutional heart of Goochland County. So we want to build on that. We want to ensure that we preserve that historic fabric that's already here. We want economic vitality. Again, that talks to promoting small businesses and opportunities for additional uses on some properties. Make sure that infrastructure keeps pace with development. I mentioned a good bit about mixed-use walkable village. And then resource protection, the ability for this village to absorb some growth so that we do protect the rural area outside of this village. So this here is a map that we've used as kind of our base map to help orient folks. And again, this is a bit different than the prior drafts. Hopefully this provides a little better orientation when someone is reading through this plan. You can quickly identify the different roads from Fairground Road to River Road to Sandy Hook and some of the major elements throughout town so to hopefully understand where you are when you're looking at the different maps. You'll see the area to the left, the rural enhancement area. That boundary is noted on this map of the proposed village to align with where the adopted master transportation plan and utilities plan is with the county and where those services are currently planned for. So the area to the left could be something for future consideration as needed as those plans are expanded. With transportation, as I mentioned, we went ahead and mapped everything that's existing from the two different street classifications. We have arterial streets and local streets, and those serve different purposes. And we have all the different sidewalks and trails that currently exist throughout the area. And we'll go into a little bit of detail about each one. So with the local streets, what we did on this map is incorporate streets that are part of approved developments or existing as well. So you can see how the area will build out as currently planned by approved developments as well. Typical street section here shows how you can incorporate sidewalks and where you have a slightly narrow width, you might want to put that street tree on the back of the sidewalk. That helps to preserve that space and really find opportunities to incorporate street trees along those streets. With arterial streets, you have basically major roads there with Sandy Hook and River Road and Fairground Road bisecting kind of the four quadrants here of the village. Those are a little medium capacity, slightly more capacity on those, and that's where you might want to incorporate a multi-use path on one side, particularly River Road is a great example of that, and that's what we've shown with the road diet as we go through that. This is an example of that road diet that we talked about, where you have quite a bit of width from curb to curb within the existing travelways right now. Based on our measurements, it does look as if you could expand that curb into the road and create some additional landscape buffer, or you could use that space for on-street parking. So that would free up some space in the downtown, into the village core, create additional space for usability or for some of those public spaces that were desired through the public input. Also, ways to kind of create more of that pedestrian realm by incorporating that streetscape as well and creating that walkability that was desired from the community. Greenways, again, as I mentioned, there's a strong desire for that interconnected network of greenways. So just trying to find more ways to layer on alternative transportation options. So you have paved paths, and we talk about some descriptions there throughout the plan of where those would go, typically along roads. You have trails, which are often stone dust surfaces or natural surfaces, and then boardwalks and more sensitive wet areas as again, this way to pick the different options that fit as developments or opportunities for funding come before this community. So bringing that all together, this was the comprehensive map of that transportation network. This shows the road diet, the local streets, the greenways, multi-use paths, and sidewalks. All interconnected, so you can see all the different ways to navigate throughout the village. Then, as I mentioned earlier, there's a strong desire to find more public spaces, the walkability and the access to these. So we identified, if the road diet were to happen in that village core, this shows that on-street parking and that expanded zone that could be reclaimed where there currently is some on-street parking within the right-of-way in front of some businesses where you could enhance that pedestrian zone, create some seating, some landscaping, things like that to try and improve that area. Also identified opportunities for, the farmer's market currently just down the street. It's got a great location, certainly a lively place. I want to encourage the county to explore ways to make something more permanent there, whether it's an open-air structure and kind of the common town green space for vendors and little performances, things like that. That could be where it is now, or if needed somewhere else in the future, just want to encourage that it's a great way to create some community-centered activities. Also wanted to acknowledge the opportunities for public-private partnerships. So you have the community college, desire to incorporate some additional land uses there. And want to encourage the county to continue those conversations and see what can come out of that, as well as opportunities for trail access along the river at the correctional facility. There's a lot of great river frontage there, and it's a great way to connect into some of the existing trail network back there, as well as plan network. As I mentioned, we spent some time mapping all of the historic resources through Department of Historic Resources website database that they have there, so that they can be recorded here and hopefully will still be around in the future as this plan lives on. And identified, as I mentioned, some tools to help preserve those so that the county can identify which one best suits your needs and move forward with those, ensuring those resources are protected. And the last, land use, most exciting topic. Our approach here was really to try and create those higher intensities in the center and radiate out with lower intensities as you work to the edge of the village. And so we also have less land uses than the prior draft. We're trying to make this easier to read, simpler to navigate, while still accomplishing the same type of regulation that is a desire here from everything that we've heard. So going to each one, the village core is really the historic part of River Road there, where you have some great historic properties, some opportunities for additional infill in some of the vacant spaces, or maybe adaptive reuse of some of the existing buildings there. And that's where we want to have that 1 to 2 story approach to fit that scale. That was certainly something that was expressed significantly from the community, so we wanted to honor that. And we also want to talk about bringing those buildings close to the street, so you create that storefront presence, that walkability along the frontage there. If you do have some parking, recognize sometimes you just have to have parking in front of a building. We want to kind of encourage that to be on a smaller scale with more parking on the side and the rear. Again, so that you don't break up that fabric along the roadway there of the buildings up against the road. Mixed-use commercial, this is where we felt you could have something slightly larger in scale. You already have, the shopping center there with the grocery store of a decent height already, so it would somewhat fit some of the commercial buildings. Commercial buildings typically have a larger first floor anyway, so I thought this was a great opportunity to continue kind of the existing setbacks that are there, slightly larger setbacks, a little more landscaping, and this is where you have a lot of access to goods and services. So it'd be great to find a mixture of uses there to help complement some of the existing commercial and retail that's already out there now. And we did say if you go up to a third story here, this is where we would encourage what's called a step back. And that just allows for that third story but pushes it back so that you have less of a canyon effect up against the roadway. Certainly there's a lot of public-owned, county-owned, institutional-type properties throughout the village, so this is just an inventory of just really references how much of that there is here. Again, it's a great place for community service-based businesses or community facilities, and so that's really an opportunity to improve the lives and those services for all residents around here. On the residential side, so you can see tucked in a little bit closer to that village core and that mixed-use commercial area, we have what we call neighborhood residential. These were 2 to 4 units per acre, more of the walkable neighborhood, buildings or housing oriented towards sidewalk-lined streets, maybe some common green spaces, some central amenity spaces, really trying to kind of create that interactive neighborhood feel, a variety of housing types here of slightly smaller scale. And then as you radiate out, that's where we have the slightly larger yards, larger home sites, nothing less than 2 units per acre there. Really as this way to transition to the much larger rural lots that would be outside of the village. Went through each of the different housing types that we talked about and where they would fit throughout these different zones. So again, you have townhomes, smaller attached, in most of all of these areas other than the single-family residential. The duplexes, and more mainly found in the neighborhood residential as well, or in the village core if it was done appropriately with the scale and oriented properly. Single-family clusters, really your neighborhood residential, or it could be in the single-family residential if it was on a larger scale that fit that no less than 2 units an acre. And then single-family large lot, which most of us are all familiar with, there's a lot of those already in the area as well. So then we tied that back to how is the county staff and y'all as the Planning Commission, how do you use this moving forward? So we identified the different intents of each of these categories, identified the primary uses within each one, the secondary uses which would be supportive of that primary use, and then how it relates to the existing zoning designations that the county already has on the books. Some of them do need some modification, particularly in the mixed use, just to maybe allow some slightly smaller scale development. And so we've listed some of those in more detail throughout the plan. And then went ahead and listed things like, design standards, which should be a heavy emphasis to work towards so you can really get into the architectural style of some of these buildings throughout this plan. Zoning text amendments, again, for some of the zoning districts, and then things like entrance corridor overlays. How could they be strengthened to really achieve the landscaping or the building relationship to the street that we're talking about throughout this plan? Then we try to bring all that together. Within each chapter, there is, there's recommendations, so we wanted to bring that all. So it was a quick guide as to within each topic, where are all these stacked and how should they be prioritized, so that the county does have this implementation procedures to kind of work through these lists as these opportunities come. And hopefully, in 10 years, you can check a lot of these off this list, and you can see that there's a lot of progress being made as these things are completed. With that, as was mentioned, tonight we're here for the Planning Commission with y'all as a Planning Commission. We're here for the public hearing with the Planning Commission, y'all. We'll be back again on Wednesday night to talk about Centerville, and then it'll move forward to the Board of Supervisors if recommended by the Commission this evening. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Board members have any questions?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have one. I think I already know the answer to it, but much of what already exists along River Road does not comply with this vision of the future.
Correct.
But I'm assuming that no current businesses are going to be forced out of business or any residents forced to move. This is something that's going to evolve over the years.
Certainly, certainly. The intention is not to target any particular property or existing business owner. This is about future applications, future developments, to try and really capitalize on some of the great things that we see out there now, and trying to enhance that as well. So, yeah.
Other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the staff have any input they want to add to this? Okay. Oh,
Just one note on the business and design forum piece. One of the recommended next steps is to actually do a strategic business plan to look at business recruitment, retention for the Courthouse Village area, and also looking at how we can retain those businesses. So one of the things Ms. Worley and I have talked about, our Economic Development Director, is looking at opportunities like how we provide facade incentives for existing businesses to potentially, if we change our design guidelines, if they choose to improve, how can we incentivize them, right? So we, foster that consistent look through and through. But again, that's a next step, but just wanted to add that since you mentioned it.
thank you. We'll now open this up for public comment. Ms. Parker, you have some comments on how we're going to function?
Sure. Public hearing. The front row has been reserved for those who wish to speak at the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please sit in the front row until it is your time. Citizens are allowed 3 minutes to comment on public hearing items. When speaking, please address your comments to the commission. The light prompts are the same as the citizen comment. The green light starts your 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. When the first yellow light blinks, you will have 60 seconds remaining. When the second yellow light blinks continuously, you will have 30 seconds remaining. And then when the red light blinks, your time is up.
Thank you. If anybody is speaking for a neighborhood group or a group of people, please come up and if you want to yield your time, state your name and address and to whom you're yielding your time to. And we'll allow that to happen 3 times for a total of 10 minutes for that particular speaker. Okay.
My name is Carol Coe, and I live at 3240 Marsh Drive. I'm a resident of the courthouse, so my concern mainly is the road diet. Have you checked with the sheriff? Is he on board with this? The court? It's a major thoroughfare. I mean, they're big trucks, as well as local traffic. There's a lot of roads coming into Route 6 in that area. And Scott Road is going to eventually have turn lanes. People coming in and out of the courthouse, out of the restaurant. I mean, there's a lot of activity going on there. And then you're contending with through traffic. And we're talking about, trucks, big, huge trucks, and a lot of through traffic. And that's my only concern is that you might not want to diet the road. And maybe check with did you check with the sheriff? Or you can't answer my question. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coe.
I wanted to raise the question if...
Please state your name and address.
My name is Sebastian Meusling. I live on River Road West 3048. My question is how we want to incentivize businesses to invest in the courthouse district by only allowing 2 stories. I would think if somebody wants to have a business like a work-from-home business, maybe on the first floor or whatever, an art studio or yoga studio, or whatever they want to have on the street level, they might still need 2 levels of living space above. And so I was wondering if it would be possible to include maybe a 3rd floor hidden behind a mansard roof as a standard, because as it stands now, I think the most potential in Goochland to invest and have a return on the investment is housing. So I would be concerned that the vacant area we have along River Road would be more used up with additional housing and not with business if we don't allow a two-story living area on top of it. You know, that's one comment I wanted to make. The other comment was the mixed-use commercial. I think we should have architectural guidelines also to break those big volumes up to make it more like a group of smaller buildings and not at those big apartment buildings or commercial buildings. They should be broken up in scale so it feels like it belongs to Goochland. There are enough examples. I just saw in Louisa County, in the Louisa district, they have those huge apartment buildings. They just feel out of place. We don't want that here.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Kate Garrity, and my children are in Goochland. I live in Chesterfield, but I'm very passionate. I've grown up here and went to school with Matt Brewer right there. But I wanted to say that I'm really excited to see that you guys are trying to make small businesses come here. I would say that revitalization within the courthouse is much needed. I would say that setbacks, I would let the applicants that bring forth that dictate what those setbacks look like. I would definitely, love to see the courthouse River Road main corridor be revitalized completely with the on-street parking, all the things that were really outlined in this plan. But I do think that from a housing perspective, growing up here, you only have single-family options, and there is nothing for people that work, especially when they call out. You see the private sector is in the east end of the county. The public sector dominates with job sources here. You've got to have people that can work and live in this county. And I really hope and encourage you all to really think about all the different housing types. I actually specialize in mixed-use development. Green Gate was one of my projects. I look at the zoning ordinance. You guys have a lot to update to get it to where it needs to be. However, I do hope that I want this for Goochland. Y'all have limited growth areas, and I want people to be able to work and live in this county and have the teachers not have to drive from Chesterfield, from Henrico, from all other counties to educate our children. It's something I hope you really take serious, and I really hope that when the applicants come before you that, we'll all be able to work together to create a win-win situation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Board members have any comments?
Well, the county definitely needs a plan moving forward as far as growth. Well, in the county, and this plan seems to be a good start on it.
I agree. I have a question for staff. I guess the traffic diet or the road diet is a, can we speak on that and what we're, I know we've reviewed this a few times.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Austin Goin. I'm the transportation manager here with the county, and I'm happy to discuss that certainly a little bit. So the road diet, one thing to address some of the concerns is, at a very high level, we would look at the intersections, make sure all the geometry works, all the trucks and cars and whatnot can make all the turning movements. And what we're not doing, road diets commonly used when you're removing lanes, it's still going to be, it's 2 lanes today, 1 in each direction. They just happen to be very wide lanes. So is there something more beneficial we can do with that extra real estate? So we're still allowing 1 lane in each direction. The thought with that is it would certainly be wide enough to accommodate any and all trucks. I think the measurements are probably about 40 foot of asphalt exists today. That's certainly more than 2 lanes needs to be. Typical 2-lane road's about 24 feet. So it's about what can we do with that extra real estate?
So like, Sunday, yesterday I was driving through the courthouse. There was a funeral, and there's, a lot of people will park on either side of the road in front of Norman Funeral Home. So if you have, then it seems like you're back down to a 2-lane road once you have, street parking. How would that impact a business like that?
So today, it's a 2-lane road, it's 1 lane in each direction. At
Correct.
least it's supposed to be. I know a lot of people, if you're
Right.
turning left, some people will try to scoot around you. So really what it's doing also, when you narrow that perceived driving zone, you're also going to lower some speeds. I know speeding can be a problem in the courthouse because it feels like you should be able to drive faster than 35 miles an hour.
Right.
I'm probably guilty of that myself, having grown up in this county, but it's something that will, I think, help reduce the speed some. And at the funeral home and at the churches, when some of those events are happening, it provides a designated space for those folks to be able to use if the parking lot does get full.
Would the speeds be lowered if you was on street parking, or the trees that were planted alongside of the road are gonna cut down on visibility, pulling out of anything that's on the side of the road?
That is something that if we were to take that forward as a project, we would certainly want to discuss with VDOT. At the end of the day, it is VDOT's call. They do maintain the roads. But that's something we can certainly put forward as part of that application for funding and review.
But both on-street parking and landscape that would cause some visibility issues.
They would, and part of that is when we design the intersections themselves to make sure that drivers can see both left and right. The parking bays and/or trees would have to be outside of those lines of sight.
Okay,
Yep. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments? Call for a vote?
I move that we recommend this for approval.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. And please use your name so we have it on record.
Kurt Patak, aye. John Myers, aye.
Tom Rockachally, aye.
Matt Brewer, aye.
Carter Duke, aye.
Thank you.
The motion to recommend approval passes on a 5-0 vote. This case will be scheduled for public hearing before the Board of Supervisors on June 12th, 2023, with a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission.
Ms. Parker, is there any old business?
No old business, no other business.
I hear a motion, we adjourn.
So motion. Second.
Meeting adjourned.